Welcome to Vermonters in Business, where we highlight some of the very best business leaders in our state and the amazing things they're doing in their communities. People of Vermont, welcome to Vermonters in Business, where our mission is to highlight the businesses and business leaders in our state that are doing amazing work in both of their careers and their communities. I am your co-host, Drew Kinney. I am a 7th generation Vermonter and a business owner in the state. Joining me as co-host today is Travis Spencer. He is a serial entrepreneur, a local business enthusiast, and around here we know him as a world-class insurance agent. Travis, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Looking forward for another round of interviews.
So, as we all know, Travis is king of the hot take, and we've got a great guest here today because I think it's going to, for lack of a better word, tee you up for a perfect Travis Spencer hot take.
Yes, and I was going to use the pun. A little birdie told me that you are a Hickory Golfer.
I am.
And one of my biggest pet peeves is the long putter. I hate the long putter. I think the long putter needs to be banned. They should not allow it. So my hot take for this interview is we got to get rid of the long putter.
Yeah, he doesn't like the belly of putters. He's an old school guy, even though he never golfs.
That's right.
Should be the shortest stick in the bag.
Yeah, exactly.
No question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Bonus points for this name from Hickory.
Interesting enough, one of the biggest differences you get back in the day is that how much loft is on the putter.
Okay.
Because the surfaces were so rough.
Right.
So you wanted to pop it and get it running.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah, no.
There's a hot take.
Yeah, there you go. I like it. Doubling down.
Yeah.
All right, Travis, so we've got a great show today. Our guest today is the one and only Matthew Dodds. He hails all the way from Williston, Vermont. He is the chief brandthropologist of Brandthropology. Matt, how are you doing today?
Oh, great. Thank you. One of the great joys when you own your own firm is to give yourself ridiculous titles.
Yeah, I think
I'm a firm
great.
believer in that.
You've inspired me. I need to work on my titles.
Yeah, exactly. I can help you out. Trade out for beers at the bar.
Yeah, Matt is originally from Williamstown, Massachusetts, and then the family moved up to the New York area.
Yeah.
And then from there, you kind of traveled around the world, international man of mystery.
Yeah.
And then you made your way back to Vermont. Tell us about coming from all the places that you were in Asia, and what made you decide to slide back to Vermont.
Having kids.
Yeah.
I grew up Williamstown, Mass, but my parents are both from Shazy, New York, which is just north of Plattsburgh.
Yeah.
On the lakeside, right across from Isle of Mont. So all my summers, my dad was a high school English teacher, so every summer we'd be up there, and so I knew the area and was familiar with it. And then I had some summer jobs here in Burlington, men's Megham's department, men's department store, all that kind of stuff. So fell in love with Burlington. Well, skip forward a bit, was a cutter in my hometown, went to Williams College in Williamstown. I went down, started in the advertising business, and that took me New York City, then Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore. In Japan, had a couple kids.
Okay.
And then it was really the kids that all of a sudden brought me back to Vermont, because you want to raise them in a place.
Sure.
And the man's moving me around. I was like, I'm working this hard. Why don't I try and see if I could go to a place that I want to be, and then raise them there. And it's worked out.
So both kids were born in Japan.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Don't get Japanese citizenship. That's
not how it works. Yeah.
No.
And how old were they when you moved back from Japan?
I moved after Japan. I moved to Hong Kong. After Hong Kong, Singapore. After Singapore, I moved back to. I made the classic Singapore to upstate New York, Vermont move. Like
so do they have memories from these places?
My son is just old enough. My daughter wouldn't.
Yeah.
And so they were 3 and 1. Yeah. When he came back.
Yeah. And then the whole time you were doing this, what was Anne doing, your wife Anne?
Oh, bless her soul. She was bearing me.
Yeah. Dealing radio.
Yeah, exactly. Putting up with me was her number one thing. And kind of like keeping the whole tribe together.
Yeah.
She went in Korea. She was working for UNESCO and the biggest international art buyer of contemporary art at that time, which was Mrs. Kim, which of the Samsung family. So they had a family, so there was some, did a lot of work on the international art scene. Then we went to Japan. She's quite, and then of course what I did is took someone who had a really good international art career and decided to make her my bookkeeper for a really modest size advertising agency in Vermont, which is a natural transition.
Yeah.
But I couldn't shout out to Anne, or as most people know her, Saint Anne.
Saint Anne, yep, I like it.
Really kind of keeps everything on. She does all the stuff that I can't do, which I don't have, the patience for.
That's incredible. So for people that don't know, I know Matt. We play golf together, and we are both members of a men's league where we go out every Thursday night and battle it out with various other golfers that are in our similar handicaps.
Yeah.
As we alluded to, Matt plays both modern clubs and Hickory clubs, which I think is a fascinating thing. But I do have one question along this, and then we're going to dive into the hot seat questions, I promise. But what about the challenging game of golf made you think, why don't I figure out a way to make this harder?
Yeah, I don't. I'm kind of. I don't know. I was flying around somewhere and I got an in-flight magazine, and I read about these guys playing golf with I like golf, but I also really like history, and I think that those two merged. And I also I also like vaguely anything in the British Empire, England. I was raised for a couple of years in 69, 71, I'm like 5 and 6 over in England, and so I have a little of that kind of like English Empire stuff. So it was those three things kind of crossing each other, and that there's kind of British eccentricity shit.
Sure.
That I just sorry, scratch that shit.
Let it fly.
Let it go. Yeah, let's go. It's podcasting. Yeah. Okay. No 6 seconds.
We could finally break out the joints, Travis.
That's right. So then I was just absurdist, and I was like, I'm all in on that. Yeah. And I was like, it's a great sport for longevity. And what I found is once you kind of join this tribe, and all of a sudden it's so narrow but so deep that I can go over to England. I'll play on Walt Heath, these prestigious courses. There'll be guys in Sweden. There'll be guys in Portugal. There'll be guys in Spain. There'll be guys, right? You just kind of go around, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, Matt, come stay at my place. Let's go out for dinner." And all of a sudden now you're not just kind of touring the town.
Right.
Someone's saying like, I'll show you where the restaurant is. And it's just really
that's very cool.
Yeah, it's really neat that way.
All right, so the first thing that we do, and we diverged a little bit from the usual path here, but the first thing we do with our guests is we have them tackle something we call the Vermonter hot seat questions.
Okay.
Matt, are you ready to jump into the Vermont hot seat?
Yes, I am.
Good to go? All right. Pancakes or waffles? What are you having with your Vermont maple syrup?
It's going to be waffles.
Waffles,
100%.
All right, and a perfect day for you. Is it a winter day at the mountain or a summer day at the lake?
Summer day at the lake.
Yep. All right. Do you ski at all?
I do, but now when I fall, I don't heal anymore.
Fair.
And that's kind of like, I was never a great skier.
Yeah.
So.
All right, and now it's your birthday, and you can go to any restaurant in the state. What restaurant are you headed to?
Oh wow! And I'm embarrassed to say I'm trying to come up with a name. And Brandon, help me. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm just going to go E.B. Strong.
Okay.
Just to
classic steakhouse. Yeah,
sure.
It's made an appearance.
Although, to be honest, Junior's Italian in Williston recently with the fresh pasta dish is insanely good.
Yeah, so. It is. And you have kind of like the two options there. You can go into like the little restaurant part, or they have like that arcade part and order from the bar. So, it's kind of cool.
I do.
Yeah, we'll hit that up sometimes in the happy hour window and get some food and drinks. All right. And then hot summer day, what is your creamy order?
My creamy order, I'm pretty much a straight chocolate guy.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's like the first time we've had a straight chocolate.
I don't think we've had chocolate.
Everyone goes maple, classic Vermont.
Well, sometimes blackberry. Kind of like mix it up a bit.
Yeah. I like it.
But I don't mix two. You
can't
together.
Do that.
No, I'm a kind of church and state guy.
All right. And then I have an additional question that Travis isn't aware of yet, but this one's specific to you, Matt, and I think it'll be kind of fun to hear your answer. But would you rather score an eagle with modern clubs or a birdie with hickories?
Wow, that's so tough. A birdie with hickories.
Yeah, I wondered. Yeah, I love it.
With the older clubs, you just literally have to be able to navigate around the course. Golf is always about navigation and risk maintenance, right? So it just all the more so when your sweet spot gets
right. You think I'd be better at it if it was, but I guess I do enough risk management around here that I get to the golf course, I'm like, send it.
You're like my most hated golfer, Bryson. He doesn't know how to navigate the course.
Well, that's the Vermont hot seat. You did it. No worries there. Pretty easy. All right, Travis, let's dive into some of the cool things about Brandthropology.
Yeah, let's talk shop now. Just tell us about the business and what you guys do. Let's start there.
Well, what I like to do is talk about it as kind of a marketing ecosystem shop. And why I say that is, there's a lot of shop. I came out of more classic advertising agency training. Procter & Gamble, Unilever, General Motors, Exxon. I've worked with some of the largest stuff on international theater, from New York to Seoul to Tokyo to Hong Kong, Singapore. So I have kind of, through that process, I have that kind of architecture of like how to steward a system across the system kind of stuff. Here's the brand, here's how you go out to market, here's conversion funneling, that kind of stuff. Which makes me, my skill set, a little bit a different beast than a person who's a graphic designer and hangs out a shop as an advertising agency. So I kind of think more from the system.
Sure.
And so Brandthropology's main specialty is working usually with some of the, we're really good with the more larger, more sophisticated clients who can make advantage of the way in which we write things up, bring the organization through and look at stuff systemically. So it's, yes, nowadays a lot of the stuff's digital, but it's steward the brand and then create the system. What are your target audiences? How do I break those out? What's the market segmentation you have? How do I position you with that? And then essentially, how do you use your website often, which is 24/7 piece? And how are we taking little mini ecosystems for these different segments, bringing them on? How do you open the sale? How do you deepen the sale? How do you close the sale across this funnel? And how are you measuring across the metrics of that, and then tying that in often with customer management relations software, that kind of stuff.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that's super fascinating because the way your background is, and with some of these much larger companies, the Visas, the Pepsis, that you mentioned, when you have transitioned that back into the Vermont world, have you found that they sort of are completely absent of these systems or has it been like you walk in and you've got something you got to fix?
I think the answer is that many people kind of have a version. They'll understand what a target audience is. They'll have like some process, but it's not a very disciplined process.
Right.
And what usually, once you have a much larger purview and bigger budgets, you can put more applied thought to research in each funnel. You can do focus groups and that kind of stuff. So what essentially is people think about it, but they don't have the systems to think deeply about it. Or they don't have the protocols to do it.
Sure.
And so kind of part of the skill set is actually having this discipline of, here's the 3 things we need to get into. Where is your brand?
Yeah.
What is the competitive context for choice?
Yeah.
What are the insights that drive conversion behaviors across each? But people don't really do those things, then figure out what the umbrella positioning is. Like in the insurance business for you, it's like, here's my discussion. I'm going to have a business to business play. I'm going to have a business to consumer. Those are 2 separate things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Then within the business, there are going to be sub-segments that I can go after. I'm really strong in X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Right? And these are my places where I have good stories and narratives to go back and get more.
Yeah.
So it's really thinking through those funnels.
Yeah.
And then that allows me to open the sale differentially.
Right.
It allows me to deepen the sale differentially with more relevant conversation with more relevant prospects, right?
Right.
So that the discipline and the tools are absent in the market, largely speaking.
Yeah.
People can kind of intuit their way into a lot of this stuff because it's not rocket science, right? But so that's one of the problems because people think, well, I can do marketing myself.
Right. Yeah.
And then they kind of can, and they kind of can't.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. As a guy sitting here who does the marketing himself, it kind of becomes a little bit of you're it's not whack-a-mole, but you're grabbing the flash in the pan of each item that's hot. It's like, all right, one day I'm gonna put a little effort into the B2B side, whatever, and then to the B2C. And it's hard to keep that discipline, as you said, down into each section.
If you think about the structure of stuff, part of the engagement, if we do kind of a more classic full Brandthropology engagement, which you don't always do, because some people want a website, right? And then you'll have the website, but in order to do a good website, you need to say, well, let's go to the market segment, right? It's not like the website's divorced from having a smart architecture for the ecosystem. But even, one of the things you do is, people have to be able to be open enough to share the numbers on their books, so you can sit around and say, well, where are your revenues, right? And what are the most profitable segments? Because then we're going to use that to determine. If you do this right, I'm going to focus on the areas that have the biggest, greatest return. Yeah. And if we get that running and I prove to you that we can go do that, then I can say, oh, now I've got profit that I can reinvest back across the system. Yeah. But it's like we're going to do these things first, these things second. So one of the I think one of the greatest skill sets that we've been able to help share is essentially prioritization of effort.
Right.
And understanding the architecture that you're driving to and saying, here's where you are, and then hey, let's get this, then we'll do that. Oftentimes it's, brand, segmentation, then it's with the place of conversion, which is the website, architect it,
Sure.
and then go into the mini marketing systems based on the differential return on investment that you have.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask, what's one of the biggest mistakes people make? And I heard in there, not knowing the customer. Do you find a lot of people don't actually know who their customer is? They have a widget, they have a service, but they don't really know who their end user is.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when we do an engagement, one of the things that we do, for Kinney Pike would be an example.
Yeah.
But one of the things you want to do
digital, they don't exist anymore.
Sorry. But let's say an insurance shop that will remain unnamed. One of the things that you find is, especially if it's maybe multi-generation, like it's your second or third generation on a business, what happens is leadership can get further away from the customer. Right. So one of the things that we'll do is, in that case, there's multiple offices. You go through and you make sure that you interview the people who are most fronted with the customer.
Yeah.
Because that's where the insights are.
Right.
Right. So then the process done correctly is taking that on board, bringing it through, and then sharing that back up with senior management, which then you're essentially helping the organization collapse the insights back through. And you're committing it to writing and then structure, and you know what I mean. So that we'll write what the kind of things I would do if I'm working with General Motors across Asia Pacific and saying, here's the deck, and here's what we're going to share. We're going to commit this all to writing, so it has scrutiny on it. Yeah, right. It's like the old Jeff Bezos and Amazon one page kind of. You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah. And then everyone can sit around. Is it good thinking? Is it bad thinking? And if it's crap, it's crap. Yeah, right. Let's attack it. And you put your mind work against it, and then. From that good things blossom.
Well, I'm glad we have someone like you who has a lot of experience, because one of the questions that I want to ask is about brand loyalty. Yeah. And just what I've read some articles recently, and just the potential shift with the age demographic. So someone like myself, and probably Drew's very similar. I'm very loyal to the brands that I've used my whole life. Like I'll never buy a pair of sneakers that aren't Nike. My favorite college teams were Nike. My favorite athletes were, and so even as a man approaching 50, I'm still buying Nike shoes. And I think the younger generation now is maybe pivoting away. They're more fluid in their, whether it's social media influencers or whatever it is, they're not as loyal. Do you buy that? Do you see that?
I think I would here's what I do. I challenge, I'll give you a cohort story. And this goes back to kind of market segmentation and stuff. So imagine I've worked for 3 different hospitals, a couple different VNAs, so relatively large scale, lots of money involved. And organizations in that case that there are probably 32 different departments, 17 of whom might deserve some kind of marketing effort, and of which 5 of whom create all the revenue for it. Orthopedic surgery, radiology, these kinds of things. So why do I tell you this story? When you deal with marketing or a marketing budget on behalf of a hospital, you have to use media, but you have to use media not at the macro level. You have to do it back to the market segmentation. So let's say if a revenue driver is orthopedic surgery, well, guess what? These are old folks, right? So and people consume media differently based on what your age is. I like to still read the newspaper, like this, right? But young folks get most of their news from social media. Now, when I tell you the story, so if we're going after orthopedic surgery revenue, we're going to go in these media. And if I'm going to go after, let's say, obstetrics or young women, right, we're going to go to a much younger demographic, and we're going to chase them with more digital means. Right. So I think, how does that imply back to brand loyalty? I think people still have brands. They have brand loyalty to those brands. They're different brands. Yeah. And it goes by cohort, the media which you choose. So it's kind of, I think brand loyalty is alive today. I'm just going to think if I were to rattle off, I don't know, a couple, quote unquote, young people brands. I mean, they'd be very, very wedded to those. I mean, Taylor Swift is a brand. Yeah, right. And so I think brand loyalty is alive and well, will always be alive and well. The means at which you try and chase them have to migrate with the cohorts and how they consume media. That's one of the things that you need insights. Well, part of the insights are, okay, if I'm going to talk to this person, how do I go check? How do I find them? And what are the best media to do that?
And bringing in media, we love video, as you know. We started doing video. I started doing videos in our office on my phone, just instructional stuff. We've evolved to doing this and doing more YouTube videos. And video is a challenge. And there's days where, I know Drew and I have it where you're like, oh, we had 50 views this time, we had 500 the next one, and then 30 the next one.
Right.
Using video, from my perception anyway, it's a long-term game. I mean, you got to grind it out. Do you see that? I mean, do you see people who are like, oh, I want to do video, and then they just get discouraged with the results, and they have to wait and buy into it a little bit more?
Well, what are you guys doing here? You're creating content. Why is content important? It provides a media-rich environment where you can, especially search engine optimization. How are you guys found?
Right.
Found because people are like typing things into search engines. And when you have good content that essentially boosts the amount of traffic that you have, people find what they have, so Google's looking at it and saying, oh, when people, they spend 7 minutes on your site, I'm making this up, 2 minutes 35, whatever it is, but your competitor site, they spend 6 seconds an hour. So now all of a sudden I recognize as Google that you guys have richer content, and when people type in these terms, I'm going to send it to the place where I observe, Google observes that there's a richer reward experience. This is why these things like opening the sale, when I say deepening the sale, this is the kind of things that you guys are doing, are creating the content to do that.
Yeah, we have a pretty basic philosophy with it, and it kind of all falls from, there's a book called They Ask, You Answer, and, we just think of the questions that our customers have and make a video about it. And I think literally every time I think about what are they going to type into the Google search bar, and that's what I title it and make the video about,
But it's fun. I mean, it is discouraging sometimes when you look at numbers, but it's actually...
Well, early for sure,
Right, in the early on, but it is fun to 2 or 3 times a week to stand in front of the light ring and get the phone out and just do an informational 1 or 2 minute video.
But to your point, Travis, it is a long play because there are times, all of a sudden I'll see, like, even we have a video now that we probably did 3 years ago about what happens during a property inspection, and it gets like a few hundred views a month now. And it's just took forever to get there, but now it's just slowly churning away. And
it is laying that foundation. Just keep going. This could have been a hot take question for me because I love old school advertising, like print. Talk about reading a newspaper. I go down rabbit holes of old print advertising, old commercials. I love old media, and I wonder. I guess the hot take is: are the glory days of advertising done? I go back to like the 70s, 80s, early 90s, and you see some of the ad campaigns. You see some of that, and because to your point, you have to know where to advertise, whether it's social media or print. And people are looking at things different ways. We're kind of away from that campaign style. I think of like the Bud Light ads or the Miller Lite ads back in the day. And are we away from that type of advertising?
I think we are and we aren't, and I'll parse that. We aren't in the sense that that great campaigns exist, that great lines exist, great positionings exist, great campaigns that support them exist. We're completely away from this sense. It used to be, when I started in the business, I'm talking about we're talking late 80s. You had 4 networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox had just come in, and you also had your public networks, but they didn't really have huge, and you couldn't advertise on them.
Right.
So what you had was a mass audience, and mass products were sold. I was telling, I think you'd asked me some questions. I was telling you, I actually did the last ring around the collar campaign for Wisk. Right? So what you had was the ability to have mass campaigns against a mass audience. This means the entire culture. You and I can go, Schaefer is the one beer to have when you're having more than one. We will all know these campaigns. We are no longer in an era where everybody has a shared understanding of Walter Cronkite from a news perspective, for brands. So that's what's decimated is a kind of pull that's a holism to the culture. And it's good news and bad news. The bad news was in the old days was only certain people had control over the media and the messaging. Now look at you guys. You guys are creating essentially content, but everyone's creating content, which essentially then, with Google's and algorithms and social media, essentially allows differentiated messaging to everybody, and everyone just sees the messages that they see, and they can be in their own bubble. So, are the days over No, in the sense that the campaigns can still be great, but it's no longer a shared cultural context.
Sure. Yeah, because there's a whole generation. I mean, and it's nostalgia for me. But to your point, the ring around the collar, the Palmolive dish pan hands, Wendy's, where's the beef? There's always those iconic things that because there's a generation that would sit home, watch TV, see these ads, and you'd go to school the next day, be like, oh, did you see that commercial? The commercials were in your head.
Yeah. Super Bowl, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So Matt, when you see, a lot of businesses in Vermont, like you alluded to, there's family businesses and mom and pop stores, and there's not probably a true dedicated marketing approach. But what's kind of like one thing when you look out there that you see that you wish more of these shops did from a marketing perspective?
I think the biggest single thing is that people don't close the loop. If you think about science.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to start with hypothesis. Then I'm going to test the proposition. I'll go put it in the market. Did it work? And then I'm going to take my learnings and then feed them back into this.
Yeah.
It's really rare to see actually a feedback loop that someone's actually, because you have nowadays all these things, Google Analytics and all this rest allows you to create the conversion funnels, actually put measures across the funnel, and then travel down the process, have a hypothesis, it would be consumer insights, how to convert them, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
That discipline just breaks apart.
Sure.
People they're just, oh, I did that. Or if you say, why don't we do this? It's, oh, I did that and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what I'm saying? That's not enough. It's like it's just a series of one-offs that end, and it's really stupid is what it is.
Right.
Because it's a waste of effort. Mm-hmm. There's two kinds of investment. One is financial, the other is time.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you have some discipline in going through around this Krebs cycle of higher learning. Right, where you test, put a hypothesis, blah, blah, blah. And it really falls apart because oftentimes people don't actually spend the money, but the measures in place. Well, you don't put the measures in place. You don't understand what success or failure is.
No,
so you don't put the success criteria down.
Yeah. And it's easy to have a piece of the measure broken, and then you can't get the information that you need. You know, like you don't have the right pixel, you don't have the right Google Analytic thing in the right place, and all of a sudden you don't have your conversion data.
Well, I've lived through many years where essentially the digital side could get overweighted because the digital side was always measurable. Yeah. Right? And the traditional side wasn't. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you had to working with a hospital, we had to say, okay, hold on. We have to, do you know what I mean? You have to make, even in a world where you're measuring everything, you can't allow the measures themselves, if the measures aren't equally across the playing field, you have to kind of allow for it. That's where you kind of, there's a science to all this, and there's also a bit of an art form to kind of understand and be real with ourselves. To say, well, I'm not going to push everything in digital. Yeah. Right. If I can still get 70 if I work for Northwestern Medical Center or a hospital, and I can get 70% awareness, which again is measured through larger companies can have awareness studies. Mm-hmm. And you could people actually don't know this, but you can go to WPTC, WCAX and say, if you're advertising with them and say, throw me into your annual survey, you can actually see brand awareness and competitive context and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I say that by way of, we could still get 70% awareness by running some it was essentially news in the evening and in the morning. You could, this is going about 15 years. You could get it. You could drive brand awareness. There's nothing you could do digitally that would ever give you anywhere near that. This is 10 years ago. Yeah. So
and with we talked earlier about getting people to open the books so you can get a better idea. Yeah. Do you have conversations with folks where you're talking about market share and what their expectations are? Do people understand when they're coming to you? It's like, we have this much market penetration, we want to get to here, or are a lot of people just still throwing stuff at the wall?
This is a Vermont thing. So you get to the hospitals. You're talking about big money. Budgets, UVM understands what the market share of its surgeons and specialty care, right? Yeah. Merchants Bank understood at the time what its market share of the rest, because they'll buy the data sources. Yeah. You get into the I don't know, is Kinney Pike Insurance really understood what the market share was? Yeah. They could pay for it, but all of a sudden it gets to be a little pricey for the thing, and like, what am I really doing with it anyway? Yeah. And all of a sudden you get down to mom and pop shops, and they have very little understanding, or if they, it's not data, it's surmising, and that makes it more difficult. Yes, you can there's still tricks of the trade to be able to get you to that.
Right.
But it becomes a measure of how much of the budget, once you have, let's say you have a $100,000 budget, which I'm not saying is crap, but you got to take for anybody out there, reserve 5% of what you're spending for the thinking.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right? Because that's the 5% is the thinking that makes all the rest go.
Work.
And so that's very poorly disseminated in Vermont, especially as you get into the smaller mom and pop kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
But Google Analytics is free.
It is free, yeah.
But you have to have a cat who understands how to place it on your website, put the pixels through.
Yes.
You have to have defined your conversion funnels. You have to be able to have a measure. There's a thing called Google Data Studios, so you can actually say, here's how many people I'm putting at the top of the funnel. Here's how richly I'm engaging. I wish I had some visuals I could show you. It's literally, I can make leadership dashboards. Spend the freaking money to understand the performance metrics so you can actually drive and understand whether or not you... Did it work? Did it not? Did it work? Great. Let's reward these things. Oh, this didn't work at all, and here's why. So therefore, we don't. But if you don't have that discipline, you don't have discipline.
And Google goes and flips it to G4 instead of the analytics tool, and you got to rebuild everything.
Right. And that's
you learn an entire new analytics platform.
That's right. It's always.
I love the piece about the feedback loop. It reminded me of our friend David Gearhart, who is also at the country club and plays a lot of golf and a big marketing guy. He focuses on B2B side. But he has a book called The Founder Brand, which I had read, and he talked a lot about getting into that feedback loop as soon as possible. And one of the strategies that he often uses is leveraging Twitter, where he'll just throw like anything out on the wall, and whatever gets traction, like that's his feedback loop. He'll take and build more content and stuff around for people, sucking people into his current business, just like SM5 marketing. But interesting. But
Did you have anything else?
So Brandthropology, how many people now?
Four full time, and then a host of another 5 that are kind of like, here's my videographer, here's my photographer, here's a specialist in a certain, if it's there's certain kinds like Modex or Joomla that are specialized, and you have those people for that. So it's nice. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
And obviously you've had quite the run because it's been about 20 plus years, right?
Yeah.
What do you see in the next coming 10 years for Brandthropology?
What happens is the technology always changes.
Yeah.
What's constant is the need for understanding your brand, how to position it. What's constant is you understand the need for competitive context. Also understand the insights for the given target audience that you have. That's timeless.
Yeah.
But what's going to change is how you understand those and create the architecture and your branded marketing ecosystem to go chase that, and the media that you use to actually go chase people is going to change like this. And now I think that we're also seeing with artificial intelligence this change where we grew up in an age where a lot of blue collar workers were displaced through machinery, and I think we're going to watch in the next 20 years a lot of white collar work get changed dramatically. Yeah. And then, the point is, I think that's worth making is, your job will not be replaced by artificial intelligence. Your job will be replaced by the person who's better at using the artificial intelligence tool than you would. Yeah. And so
completely agree. We talk about that in the insurance space all the time. It's like I don't think that it's going to replace the insurance agent, but I think it's going to replace insurance agents that aren't willing to adopt it and utilize it. For sure.
And my biggest concern is that messaging itself will be under attack because the volume of it and the fraudulent messaging, how easy it is to create false. I can sit around and have Warren Buffett say messages and put a vision. It's going to be. And I think for people who are not sophisticated consumers, and the youngest folk with technology are always the most sophisticated, and the eldest are always the most victimized, right? Yep. That's as I age and I watch my parents age, that's a huge concern that I've got.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Matt, we appreciate you coming on the show. Where can people learn more about Brandthropology?
Brandthropology.com.
Yep. And what about connecting with you? What's the best email address? Anything like that?
Yeah, Matt at Brandthropology is a great way to get a hold of .com.
All right. Cool.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we appreciate you, buddy.
What a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.